Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all.
Can I just say, Janine, I had to say this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Your ADHD today was on fire.
The text messages?
All of them.
I know. Can I tell you what was happening? Okay, so
I was like, we went from like one space to a totally different planet.
it is bad today. I'm not going to lie to you. It is bad.
I was laughing out loud on my drive home.
Well, and if it's bothering you, it's hilarious because you're used to me.
Oh, it didn't bother me. I was I literally was about to text you and be like, your ADHD is, and then the fire emoji. But then I was like, I have to tell her this because I don't want her to think I'm annoyed because I wasn't. I was laughing my butt off.
Even if you were annoyed, I'd probably be like, that's all right.
Yeah.
It's just part of how we roll.
Unconditional love here.
Well, I was watching Real Housewives, which is so dumb. I don't know how I got back into that, but I did. And let's see, working on session notes, cleaning the kitchen, listening to a podcast off and on when I took breaks from writing my notes. So I have been all over the place. And then I have a constant to-do list like going for the beginning of the week.
I'm always curious how you two do all the things that you do between work, this. It baffles me thinking about that. So the ADHD is probably your superpower to be able to keep all that ground. Yeah.
Without a doubt. And whatever kind of crazy we are, we're the same.
Which is amazing. Like it's why we work.
Absolutely.
Like
let's pop on at 10 o'clock at night. She's like, okay, I'm down. And then the next day we're dragging, but it's fine. We just pick each other up.
We get energized by just doing this. So
we do. I understand. It's I'm learning as I get older. I don't know if it's that the ADHD is getting worse or that I just can't manage it as well because I'm getting older.
Or here's a third option.
Yeah.
Maybe you are just well out of F's and you're like, here well I am.
Out. You know what? I think that goes with aging too.
Yeah.
I care less by the minute, to be frank, about appearances, performance, all the things. I'm just comfortable with me.
I love it. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Switching gears. You guys, I am so excited because today we have our dear friend Lexi Schmidt on. Say hi, Lexi.
Hi, everyone.
I can't believe it. I'm so excited that you're with us. You are our first guest. Ever.
Wow. I'm sweating, but I'm also very excited. So
Lisa texted me and she goes, I'm not going to be the first. And I'm like, well, Lexi got in there first. So what can I say?
Mm-hmm.
I would love, Lexi, for you to give a little intro to yourself.
Yeah.
So like what you do, obviously you work with us, but your specialty, your credentials, all the things, just give us a little intro about you.
Okay. I'll start off with this. I do couples and family therapy. That's why I got hired on to work at Southeast. And I'm getting my toes dipped into the world of trauma, personally and professionally. But I like to kind of translate that into family relationship work. So I have a few duo family relationships on my caseload that I'm trying to use trauma work in.
That's amazing. You're so systems oriented. That's what I love about working with you. And your clients adore you. I mean, and it's easy to see why that is.
I love them. Yeah, there's a lot of heart in my relationships with clients.
Yes. And Lexi's newer to our team, and it's been really fun to get to know you and see, first of all, you amass a following for yourself. Like you have clients that really love working with you. You were not hard to fill up with clients whatsoever. But then getting to know you personally, we had a conversation at our staff retreat that got us thinking about a couple of the topics that we've covered. And yeah, Lexi is so brave being here today because we're going to talk about some hard things, but important things.
Mhm.
Don't be fooled. I'm shaking in my boots, but
Ah!
I'm ready for it.
You don't look nervous.
You
You
really
on the
don't.
outside, you look very cool, calm, and collected. So I would never
Wow.
guess that you were shaking in your boots.
Great.
Lexi. On that note, right? If you can tell our people, our forensic friends, a little bit about the conversation that we had at retreat, because we've done the megachurch madness episode, we did the purity culture episode. We've been kind of talking about problematic dynamics in
Mhm,
spiritual spaces.
mhm,
And I'm thinking of calling the episode Spiritual Grooming,
mhm.
because that's kind of what
Sure.
it is in a
Mhm,
weird way. But I wanted to kind of frame the conversation with your thoughts from that moment when we talked about it and kind of opened it up a little bit to now when you're willing to be on a podcast, talk about it openly. Yeah, and actually even use your name, which is wild. When we first started talking, it was anonymous, maybe, or maybe contributing to the topic that we talk about. And now, like, you're here, face
mhm.
and name, which I'm so impressed by.
And I want to say too, even you presenting the opportunity to talk and even have you two as clinical therapists kind of give language to this experience
Hmm.
has been so healing to even look back on through that lens.
Hmm.
So I'm thanking you ahead of time before even doing this. This is why I was so fired up when I first got on this call,
Mm.
because I'm like, this is huge. And I hope someone, even if it's just one other person, can hear this
Hmm.
and somehow bring healing to their own experience too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now I'm tearing up. I
I
started mad
know.
and now I'm tearing up.
Lexi, you're so sweet. We are so excited to have you. And like Janine said, it's so brave for you to share. And, like she said, use your name and talk about your experience because it's super vulnerable. And we're just so appreciative of you being willing.
And you're not alone
Platform.
either.
Mm,
No.
mhm,
So walk us up to now about just since retreat when we started opening it up. We're going to get into the whole story in a few minutes, but how did you get to a point of wanting to talk openly like this? What's your process look like?
mm. I think a large part of being willing and even wanting to talk about this comes from the confidence of having a lot more knowledge about clinical mental health.
Mm,
Before I was asking questions of, is it my intellect? Am I the problem somehow? Which, yes, there's some practicality to, like, there was a lot of risk factors in my life leading to me being vulnerable to this.
mm,
But at the same time, there are some clinical symptoms in some individuals where they should come with some warning labels.
Oh, preach. We have said before, if people looked on the outside like they are on the inside, it would be very helpful.
Ugh, yeah, that would have been great. And can we just talk about, I don't know if this is everyone or if this was just my deck of cards, but college is just a vulnerable time.
Oh, it is.
Mm.
It is.
It's so vulnerable. Pretty much all of your 20s
Yes.
is a vulnerable time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you are learning so much
Mm,
about yourself. And then let's talk about college and grad school. I mean, we're like babies, not to make it weird. We're like babies where we're just like sponges trying to
yes.
soak everything in. And it's almost like similar to newborns. There's just that kind of intrinsic trust that we have going into this world and into ministry and, you know,
Mm,
this
Mhm.
field.
Yeah. And I think, I naturally am just very relational. I'm
yeah.
a 6 on the Enneagram, take that as you will.
Hmm.
I am distrusting, but also painfully loyal, and I assume the best in people. And I think that's why I'm able to do, what's right in front of us at the moment, because, yeah, that clinical mental health knowledge, I still love people and I want to give grace in a lot of categories, but I'm also aware of my humanity and where, God's grace is more powerful than mine.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome.
Well, and Nat and we're bulls in a china shop. We can be a scalpel when we have to be, but we're typically more like an axe or a sledgehammer or something
Mhm.
wildly more aggressive. And when you shared at the retreat, just sort of in passing about some experiences that you had, Nat and I responded like we always did. I'm gonna need an address. I'm gonna need a social security number. I'm gonna need to be able to speak to everyone in his life. Like
Yep.
we go on the offensive. I think you handled us beautifully, and you were sort of like, wow, um, that's a
I need
lot.
you to know that was a core memory that's now seared in my memory is having basically the whole DV team sitting at a
Oh yeah.
table on their own devices, typing up his name, getting like full
Oh, we went to the
analysis.
bottom of the well. We
That's
found
us.
things, we found news articles.
Yeah.
We went to the bottom of the well because that is what we do.
Do all the things.
And so we're
That's
wildly
badass.
protective. So even as you're telling your story, if you need a break, if anybody's listening at home and they need a break or whatever, just tell us and we'll model that because what you're talking about is really heavy. And Nat and I are going to try to not just blast off into another dimension trying to save everyone and everything.
I make no promises.
I know I can't promise that we won't be on a plane after this phone call, but you know, we really want to, and I can tell that you're in a place where you're just kind of ready. I've been watching you wrestle with this. You've mentioned a few times to me that you're sort of working through a whole lot of things about this sub evangelical subculture stuff and then what we actually believe and what's so important to us. And I see you doing all of that math and like trying to figure it out. So you're not alone.
It's like the gif of the confused woman with just math formulas.
Oh, that is what it feels like, I think. And I see you, Lexi, and I think about myself so many years ago, right? Where because you're much younger than me. Just being so plucky and like ready for the world and ready for anything and way more trusting than I would be now. Unfortunately, you lose some stuff along the way
Mhm.
too, which is sad, right? And so seeing you go through that is hard. And then I even think about Nat when I first met you, like, I mean, it's just kind of wild to think about
Mhm.
where we've been.
Mhm. I think it's interesting because I don't identify with that in terms of overly trusting up front. I'm actually the opposite. However,
It's a black cat, not a
I
golden
am a black
retriever.
cat. Yeah, Lexi's totally a golden retriever.
Oh, you are.
It's
It's
a
funny because in college people would have said I was black cat. People thought I was an Enneagram 8. And then I did this flip. I think it was through this healing journey after
no.
this moment.
Maybe you're having some freedom.
Mhm.
Hey.
It's like getting the childlike self back again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
What does your therapist think about you doing this?
She doesn't even know.
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna tell her?
We got a lot of shit we're working through.
I hear
I
that.
couldn't swear on here. Aren't you guys
You
trying
can
not to?
absolutely
Oh,
swear on
you
here.
can
Nat and I
swear.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want you to be your most
Genuine self.
unfiltered, genuine self.
Okay. All right.
So you do you, boo.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. We're
Mm-hmm.
here for it. We're here for it.
We are. So, Lexi, I want to hear your story. So, why don't you take us back to the beginning, where you were at, and what kind of happened that brought this person into your life? And then I know we'll be hearing more about this person too.
Okay. Yeah, in a nutshell, I grew up in a very unique denomination up in small town North Dakota. And I think I had this deep desire to learn more about biblical studies, about how to use that from a justice perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just growing up experiencing a lot of what's the word? Discrimination, spiritual discrimination for having brothers with disabilities, severe cerebral palsy. So I saw a lot of pastoral manipulation from that angle from a
Mm.
young age and how it affected my family. So I had this internal drive to go study theology for college.
Hmm. What did that look like for your family, that spiritual manipulation piece with your brothers who were having that? Well, your
Mhm.
whole family was having a struggle with all of it.
Well, I think the most extreme statements that we would have received was your parents committed some kind of sin for them to be born with these disabilities. Yeah.
Oh,
Janine's face
Don't think too hard
right
about
now.
that right now. Yeah.
I, oh, that's worse
So
than I was
that's the
even
kind of
thinking in my
fire I
head.
had. That's
Yes.
the fire I had studying this. Meanwhile, I don't know if this is your experience as females, but hitting so hard this glass ceiling in the conservative Christian studies
Oh,
world. So this push
Yeah.
pull. Like, am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
Also, my being feels like there's no other purpose for me right now. Like I need to study theology.
Yeah.
My family,
mm,
for me, for my culture.
Mm. I think so. I want to go back really quick
yeah.
Mhm,
to what you said about that your parents did something,
Oh,
sinned in some way
mhm.
for this to happen. I just want to say, first off, that's a load of horseshit,
yeah.
obviously. Sorry, I'm not very theological in my
Call
speaking,
it what you will. You know, Paul
but
uses the word scubala. That's
you
Greek
know,
for shit. So,
I
it's,
know.
but you even just saying that, my heart
Oh, I
sank.
know.
I can't even imagine your family and what you guys went through
Mm-mm.
with that as a narrative. That's wild to me. So I just needed to back up there and
Mm.
name that because that's, I mean, someone who doesn't know a lot about your denomination or even your your life,
mhm,
Mm.
um, that's pretty wild.
Well, I
mhm,
can see the table being set, right? So I'm picturing little Lexi and pastors saying stupid shit, which is what they do sometimes, right? We don't hate all pastors, but some of them are just awful. And so little Lexi loves her family, is getting messages that aren't sitting right, gets real curious, gets real fired up, tries to push back. And the message to a female
Mm.
pushing, particularly on theology, is that there's something wrong with us,
mhm,
which is interesting. The eight part is interesting because it's like, I don't know if that's innately you because what you were trying to do was answer some of these really big questions.
mhm. And I think what makes it more complex is also this subconscious awareness that pastors hold power.
Mm.
Yes.
And at the same time, while my family was going through this catastrophe, with one of the twins dying when I was just going into teenage years,
Mm.
pastors are all I had to rely on. So I also don't want to sit here and just talk shit all day about pastors because I'm only here partly because I was on their shoulders for half
Mm.
of my life thus far.
So for you, there was both. There was some really good influence and some beautiful support from the church and from
Mm-hmm.
ministry that you're involved in, but then also on this other side, there was some really negative things being said. So yeah, there was that tension.
Mhm,
Which is also vulnerable
mhm,
because you needed them, they had power. That's part of it too, right? So
mhm,
yes, they were helpful, and I think that that's beautiful. And a lot of pastors, listen, there's so many people in churches who are at the hospital with families who are, bringing meals to people who are taking care of people. There's a lot of that in the church, and it's one of the things I actually love about the church.
they're my best friends, and I tell them, I'm like, "You guys are exposure therapy for me because
Mm.
Yes, yes,
I've seen some of the worst stuff." So,
you
yeah, you
have.
trust
So
me.
I really hear that, Lexi, that you've been both loved and manipulated and hurt like most people, right?
Mhm,
Maybe a
mm.
little worse than some people, but
Mm.
okay. Tell me real quick about your family structure. So it's you, are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay.
Twins were immediately after me, a year after with cerebral palsy. Um, So a lot of living in fight or flight for a good chunk of childhood,
Yeah.
and I love them. There was so much beauty to come from their lives, but the reality is it was really hard on a family dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You can't fight that. So, and then there was another boy 5 years later, and then another girl 10 years later.
Okay.
So you're 10 years older than your sister.
Yes.
Okay. And then the twins, one passed away when you were going into your teenage years, like high school.
I was 12 at the time. Turned 18.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then what about your the other twin?
So he's still living. Little side subject. I just visited him 2 weeks ago. He loves my dog. He
I
comes.
saw you post, I think you posted pictures of him on your Instagram.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, you guys were adorable driving around and all the things.
Talk about shaping theology and
Mm.
faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just that. Yeah, I can't even. That's a whole nother subject. So
Okay.
put a pin in that.
And then parents still married?
They are. Yeah, and just out of respect, there's some information that I will share and won't share, but
Of course.
there's been the ugly face of addiction and coping with grief.
Mm.
Life is just really difficult, especially when you're in a Midwestern
Yes.
suppress the negative emotions culture.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and a
So,
lot of couples don't survive losing a child,
mhm.
too.
Oh,
And
this is not legal. They handed divorce papers and adoption papers to my parents at my brother's birth.
Who?
the hospital, the doctors.
The doctors handed them divorce
Yeah.
papers and
Mhm.
adoption papers.
Yeah.
Wow. I get more surprised by your story as we go.
Mhm. So I think all of this leads up.
Yes.
This, I was like an opened wound in college, and I was still being persuaded to even talk to a therapist at the time. I was a bleeding wound, and I think any pastor could see that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that seamlessly leads into this subject.
So you
Yeah.
left the state. Did your family move to Colorado or just you for school?
No, being the oldest, I feel like I was leaving a burning house.
Mm.
Yeah, my dad had been struggling with some pretty strong addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Mom is a little in denial of it, but is still dealing with some trauma. And I persuade them all the time, therapy is a thing. They're gonna listen to this and probably kill me, but
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also coming from a family of addiction, and my twin brother, he won't kill me. He, sober 7 years. Mother is a recovered addict as well. It's a real thing, and it comes from pain,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's so much, regardless of what you share and what you don't share, there's so
Yeah.
much respect for you and for your family and just what you all have gone through and stuck through together and all of that. So I just want to say that, like for Lexi's parents, we have so much respect for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I am tearing up.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's touched both of our families. So I think lots of empathy, lots of understanding.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Lexi, you're gonna make me cry.
I know, you guys.
I can't look at you.
You're getting the sweetest
Yeah,
little
just
face
do the
ever. I
whole
just can't, I
podcast
can't
like
take it.
This is the part I'm gonna post when Lexi covers her eyes.
I know. Gosh, get me ugly crying. Put that. Okay, so you leave. You leave the burning house. Where do you go to study theology?
So I go to a very conservative undergrad Christian college.
Okay.
Biblical studies, historical theology, philosophy, all of the things that push your brain too far.
And you are just determined to like figure out some big questions that you have.
I had this goal. I'm like, I'm going to take this information, I'm going to take it back to my hometown. I'm gonna fix the world.
You're
Save
gonna
your
save
loved
them.
ones on blast. Yes.
Yes.
Mm.
What happened then?
Well, long story short, well, there's two different lenses I could tell this from, but that did not happen. Turns out I'm not God. Yeah.
What?
And also there's so much kindness that the Lord showed me that, because what it showed me is that he desired my heart more than anything.
Hmm.
And it's been really hard to wrestle with getting a whole undergrad in theology for the sake of my own spiritual development.
Mm.
Oh, yes.
Mm.
Oh, wow. To wrap my head around that. That was big.
A lot of money later. We won't talk about that.
A lot,
But,
a lot of
Right?
money later. Oh,
Preach.
ugh, yeah, so I guess we should say on the podcast, names won't be used of.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you're out here away from your family, bleeding wound in undergrad,
Mhm.
paying all of your money to figure out what you believe spiritual development wise, and you don't go home and burn it down. What do you do instead?
I won't lie to you, until years after even graduating, it felt like floundering.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How so?
I'm trying to think of reasons to it, but I'll just explain it for what it was. I hit the wall. I think that a lot of theology, higher Christian studies students hit, of just realizing my brain is zapped, but my heart is empty.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
know so much and I feel so little.
Yeah. hmm Also just feeling very confused about where to apply my hands. Like, my head
But yeah.
is full, my heart is broken, and my hands are antsy.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And it led me to some difficult areas, but I was still in my college program, approaching an internship working at a church. And it was then the summer before working at that church that I did some flowers for a friend's wedding. And I met her through the church as well. And I was friends with a few older people because I had a near and dear friend, um, whose name I won't share on this podcast,
Mm.
and his wife, who have been kind of spiritual parents to me when my family's been in a state of crisis since I was in junior high, maybe high school, I think.
Yeah.
And I still do. I trust them with my life. I trust them with the most vulnerable parts of my story, and
Mm.
they know that. And they're some of the wisest people I know.
Mm.
And so I had these people and some people that I knew from the seminary who wanted to introduce me to the officiant of the wedding.
Mm.
He was married, very nice couple. I could tell that she had some morning sickness when I was at this, we were there for a week at this wedding.
Yeah.
And I could tell that she had some morning sickness. And I was one of the first then to find out that she was pregnant. So
Oh,
immediately I feel like I'm in,
you're
like,
in.
yep, I'm in the club.
Well, and these trusted people have introduced you to this person. So yeah, I mean,
So many reasons.
any
Yeah.
friend of them is a friend of yours. I mean, that's how I operate too.
Mm.
I like to welcome people.
And, keeping in mind too, this mindset that I had growing up, coming from my family background, feeling this incredible desire to pursue pastoral leadership, or what I thought was pastoral leadership anyway.
Mm.
I always gravitated to the officiants, the head pastors. I just wanted to learn everything. I'm like, I want to do what you do. I want to love people well. I want to take notes. And also just the subconscious. I keep see I keep saying subconscious awareness, just knowing that there's some kind of power there
Mm.
that's
Mm.
intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And like, I feel that I need to win it over somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Maybe that,
approval.
yeah, maybe that Enneagram 6 is starting to come out a little bit, but
A little bit. Yep.
uh-huh. So many reasons to gravitate to this man.
Mm-hmm. Can I back up really quick and ask a question?
Mhm.
What was the purpose of them wanting to introduce you to the officiant?
Mm.
Mhm.
All of these close friends of mine at church, at school, I had an army around me who knew my background, who knew my story, and they were encouraging me to pursue pastoral leadership as well.
Okay.
Pursue pastoral leadership, like to be a pastor or to learn from a pastor, or
I
both,
think to
maybe
be
both.
a pastor,
Okay.
and I think a lot of that is just seeing the very conservative culture that I grew up in, and
Yeah.
people being like, "Go women! We want to see more women in leadership," which I love.
Mhm.
And we need.
Yeah. He was a pastor and he worked at the local seminary.
Okay.
He worked in a department called spiritual formation, which to me, I will be honest, and I don't want to represent this poorly, is a bit confusing to me, especially after my story with him.
Yep.
As for now, it seems like sitting in a dark room with a candle lit and thinking that it's the Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
That's my picture at the moment. I know there's a lot more to it, and I've actually had some very respectable, safe people lead me through a form of spiritual formation to even heal from the bitterness of this situation. So I don't want to
Yes.
write it off.
Right. Of course.
No, also though, I shared in the purity culture one that a director of my spiritual formation process told me to masturbate. So it's weird. It can get weird.
Yeah,
It's
It can
weird.
get weird.
it's the most vulnerable place a human can go.
Yes.
It is.
So you meet this. Yeah.
I meet the officiant, and he just seemed enamored with me, and especially with, I'll be blunt about this, especially with my daddy issues.
Mm.
There was another part of me that really lit up. I don't like that I just used that phrase because it was a little too blunt, but um, it just felt really nice to be seen
Mm.
in my pursuits of something that not a lot of people, older men, understood. Like I spent most of my childhood and thus far in my career at that point trying to defend myself
Mm.
in what I studied. And to
Yes.
have somebody take me by the hand and say, "Yes, let me provide some stepping stones for you to accomplish your goals," felt really good.
So
Mm.
he saw you and came alongside you right away.
Mhm.
What did that look like? Did he ask to have coffee? Did he want to meet with you at his office? Like, what did that look like?
Mhm. So he presented the idea of doing a Bible study that would be an example of what seminary would look like. That sounded so fun to me.
Mm.
Like a Bible study of just you and him?
Just me and him.
Oh, okay.
And him kind of designing something that would be like what seminary would be like was kind of the
Mhm.
goal.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's how it started out. And we meet probably 2 or 3 weeks later. And I didn't take note at the time. We met in the library on campus, and looking back, it's 2020.
Of course.
He shut the blinds, he would shut the door. It was a time of day where there weren't a lot of people around,
Mm.
and he suggests going through the Song of Solomon.
Oh my gosh. I cannot with that shit.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is when I start to, Lexi, this is when I start to jump out of my seat.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, I cannot with that. Okay, continue.
Mm.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to try not to keep interrupting you, but I just cannot.
You're good. No, I appreciate the reactions actually. I'm a very reserved person
Mhm.
as it is anyway. So I felt safe
Yeah.
in my own skin. You know, if I notice something weird, I'm not going to sit around long for it.
Mm-mm.
And I think what made this easy to stick around as long as I did for was the fact that it was paired with spiritual formation.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm like, yes. And I'm like burned out from studying theology. I'm like, okay, this seems necessary. Spiritual formation seems necessary for pastoral
Yes.
development.
and feeling like
Gotta be something there.
where he was going to take you emotionally was going to complement all of the studying that you did. So you probably gave him more license to take you down a path than you might have otherwise.
Yeah.
I remember running through my head like, okay, he knows this person, that person.
Mm-hmm.
This is okay.
Yeah.
He works at the seminary.
They're supposed to be a trusted human in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're married. They are, working at the seminary. They're technically, I'm guessing he's older than you, right? Like a director, a leader. So there's also this concept of, again, we kind of just jump into trusting individuals in this field, in that field, right? Because why wouldn't we?
It's interesting that he would meet with you kind of at an official place, because what I'm hearing is you're meeting at the school, but then closed blinds, closed doors. It's just interesting to me that at this point, at least, it's kind of happening under people's nose at the school. So he can still lend some legitimacy to what he's doing. He could even probably play off the privacy as being for you if it's an emotional process, right? Oh, Lord.
And the whole, I think the umbrella that he really talked to me about spiritual formation under was embracing human desires.
Oh,
Oh, no.
I can't.
This is so validating for me right now, y'all, because I haven't put all these pieces together until literally this moment.
I am burning in my
This is why we're doing
skin.
this. I know my butt is sweaty. I'm
Mine
sweating.
too.
I know.
Oh,
Janine, it's called Swaz. I have it.
Really?
Sweaty ass. Yeah.
It only happens when I'm mad. Oh, no.
Oh, I'm big mad, Lexi. Okay,
Oh,
so
Lexi, honey.
so he starts with Song of
Mm.
Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, take us from there.
Mm-hmm. And he's using things, which spoke to me directly as a student in theology about context. The Bible is written for us, but not to us. So that part was fun. I love biblical studies.
You
This
wanted to
man,
know more.
yeah. And I'm like, this book, especially that gets violently ripped out of context
Yes.
constantly.
As it was in that moment. But yes.
Absolutely. Okay, continue.
Yeah,
Which
sorry.
part of me knew that as well.
Hmm.
And then what he also worked to do was talk about philosophy. He pulled in church history of, intimate friendships.
Nope.
It wasn't until the third meeting that he started to present this idea that spiritual friends are supposed to have sexual connection.
He did not say that.
So he's trying to establish an intimate friendship with you based on the concept that this is normal in scripture. He literally has a study around it and he springs this on you like the third session. He's like,
Hey, this is okay.
Not just okay, but this is a
what it looks
biblical
like.
mandate.
This is spiritual. Absolutely not. I'm so pissed off right now. So here's the thing. This whole time from day one, I'm going to just recap really quick and then I'm going to have you continue. From day one, him asking you to do a Bible study with just him is first wildly inappropriate, right? And it sucks because we don't understand that in the moment, right? Especially when our brain is wrapped around as students, wrapped around, I want to learn more about me. I want to grow in my own faith. I just got ripped up and spit out in undergrad, and I am trusting you with this. So first off, he takes this idea. He's like, I'm going to run with this. He's already enamored with you. Then he continues to push. Do you guys remember? Sorry, this is such a weird analogy. Do you guys remember in gym class when you had to like test your
Oh yeah, I love that. It was the only thing I could do.
Your okay, let's confused. Hold on. So it's the one where you test your flexibility and you push the little knob.
Yep.
And you try to push it further and further. This might be too old for you.
Oh,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I was young.
Yes,
She
yes.
does not. She's younger than us, Nat. They don't do that anymore.
I know they don't do
The
that. And
computers
I
do
might
it.
be aging myself, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's what he was doing, right? Is he was
Pushing.
trying to get
Exactly.
more and more flexible
Oh, that's
and
perfect.
push
Yeah.
your boundary as he
Yes.
went.
Mhm.
Also, can we just talk about the fact that the reason it was inappropriate is not a man meeting with a woman. This notion that
Yeah.
men and women can't go to lunch together unless there's another female,
The Billy
whatever.
Graham rule.
This is so purity. This is purity culture
That's
nonsense.
pure. Yep.
Yeah.
They have had to implement that at churches because there are so many people who cannot
Like
manage
spelling.
themselves well, right? But in
Mhm.
theory, a man and a woman should be able to have a meeting like this and have it be safe for both people. The warning signs that were there that you were noticing, but also trying to manage was
Mhm.
closed blinds, closed door, and the subject matter was getting more and more sexual. I mean, it started sexual with Song of Solomon, but it kept kind of moving in that direction. That's the part that's inappropriate, right?
Mhm.
Ugh, yucky. What did you say when he walk us through? I want to know about that session, that third one when he decides to let his freak flag fly and say
There it
whatever
goes.
shit he was gonna say.
Yep. The question that I really remember, I almost felt guilty for asking it, but the intellect in me just demanded it. I'm like, what's the difference between, he called it his ministry with these women and your relationship with your wife?
You asked that in the
And
moment.
mhm,
Oh, shut up. I love you so much. What did he say?
he, looking back at it now, I think he was suppressing a lot of offense probably. But he
Yeah.
almost
Are
looked a little
you
angry.
literally just went for the jugular. I mean, that was a throat punch. You're
Yeah,
like,
you
how is
literally
this
throw
different
punched
than your
him.
marriage, dude?
You broke his neck with that one. Anyway, continue.
He says to me, my wife and I are still talking about that. As for now, she doesn't want to hear the details of the ministry.
So wife,
Wife knows.
I cannot with this.
Okay, the
Wife
wife, the
knows.
pregnant wife with the morning sickness,
Yep.
for now, we're not discussing this part of the ministry. Oh, fuck right off.
Right. Oh my gosh, I cannot.
Unbelievable. Lexi?
So he's telling you that he has this ministry with other women, basically where he probably sleeps with them. We're just going to assume.
Yeah.
And that's his ministry. And he openly talks about this ministry and works at a school with young women.
Mhm.
He's got a roster. A
He's got a
roster that he's
roster.
messing with. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. Carry on. So he
Mhm.
comes back basically telling you she knows but doesn't know details.
Mhm.
But they're still talking about it.
Mhm.
Does that satisfy you in the moment in terms of your question or
I think it was in that moment, I was wondering my motivation to keep showing up to these
Mhm.
meetings with him. And I think at that point, I just wanted to investigate.
Oh,
I
you got
felt this
curious.
protective mode for the wife. I'm like, I want to get in, I want to dig this apart. And I think at some point, my pride was really frustrated, but I physically could not get myself to be with that man.
Mm.
I think it was after one or two more sessions at that point. He was kissing me on the forehead. He was giving me like long, uncomfortable hugs. He was putting his hand on my thigh and asking if it was okay.
Absolutely not.
Wait, okay, wait.
Sorry, this is how this
Uh-huh.
goes, Lexi, with Janine and I. We
Okay.
just like stop all the time.
So
This
you
was all in one session too. And you know, I I can empathize with the women who get full on sexually
yes.
assaulted
Yes.
in this case because it's like this just I don't know, like this paralysis comes over and you're like, I have to go with this.
You said it. You said, "Oh my gosh, he sees me. He sees me and he sees what I'm doing is good and you believe in what you're doing." So, session I want to cuz I need chronology or I'm
Hold
going to
on.
lose it cuz I'm mad.
Can I ask a quick question before we go down that? Lexi, you
Yeah, yeah.
just said something and I didn't fully hear it. You said there's a paralysis that goes over you, and then what was the second part you said?
And you just feel the need to go with it.
Yes.
Mm.
Yep.
Mm.
So there's this pressure,
Mhm.
right? This person, there's all these different narratives in our brain. This
Mhm.
person's leading me. This person is a spiritual mentor. This person sees me, like Janine was saying, right? Like this person is getting to know me. I feel so special.
Mhm.
And so then this paralysis happens. And it almost, and I don't know if this is true for you, I've talked to other women who felt this way. There's almost this guilt of like, oh my gosh, maybe I led them on.
Absolutely. I was running through what I wore the day I met him.
Yeah.
Oh.
My body language was, what my facial expressions were, what language I was using.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
Well, the paralysis is absolutely psychological. It's trauma. It's all of that. The paralysis is your nervous system
Mm.
assessing that there was a threat, and not just any threat, but a threat the likes of which you had seen before. So that doesn't mean that you had somebody be inappropriate sexually before, but you had seen this power before.
Mm.
And the power is one of the things that then we want to go along with. There
Mm.
is a part of us that when we get in its presence, we want to go with it,
Mm.
you know? And I think in this third session, what I'm hearing you say is you threw up a pretty, I mean, I can't think of a more direct, appropriate question to ask in that moment than the one that you asked.
Mm.
So in that moment, what I heard you say is you kind of knew something not okay was happening and you
Mhm.
got protective of the wife.
Mhm.
At that point, were you disconnected emotionally from him completely and then you're investigating?
Mhm.
Okay, so now you're playing along. So for
Mhm.
the rest of the third session, then you're playing along just to see what he's gonna do.
I think it was partly that, and also partly this. I felt like what I was investigating was the trustworthiness of spiritual leaders.
Mm. Oh yeah, you're muted, boo.
That's so huge, Lexi, what
Mm.
you just said.
So you're going along with it. How does the third session end? I know it all might be jumbled for you, but I'm just curious, like,
Mhm.
how does he rebound from that? And then how do you manage him? Because you now you're going, I don't know about you, dude.
Mhm. It felt like this desperation because he started pulling out his schedule while his wife's gone visiting her family the following week, saying that I had first dibs on when I could reserve time with him.
You had for you lucky girl.
That
Oh,
you had first dibs while she was out of town?
what a privilege. Yeah. Mhm. Y'all, at this point, I felt a fire go through my body.
I bet was your butt sweating?
Yeah, probably. I don't know if I've ever noticed that about myself, but it probably was.
Probably only when you're mad. That's other than that, and I
Yep. Mhm.
oh,
I will be honest too, I probably sound really tough and like I knew exactly what I was doing, but at the same exact time,
I know.
eh, Michael Scott quote, I knew nothing of what I was doing.
So you're thinking I'm gonna see where this goes, but
Yeah,
also there's a part of you that doesn't understand the depth of this sickness that's happening here.
no. Because here's what I did is I booked a flight that night to go back home and see my family. I just needed to flee not only the campus, but like that whole state. I'm like, my body needs to exit the premises. I need to go. Yeah.
I'm so glad you gave that to yourself. And that you realized, my gosh, that you realized and that it didn't go the way that he hoped that it would. So
Mhm.
even though you were curious and kept on for a little bit, the stakes were really high for both of you at that point because he's employed at this place. You've got mutual friends. I mean, there's a lot happening. And you didn't know everything then that you know now. So you're
Mhm.
sitting here like, is this just me? Is this all of
Yeah.
these women? I mean, there's a roster, but we don't know what's happening with each one of them.
Did
Mhm.
you know any of the other women?
Names were never shared. I think people were really good about it was kind of a he said she said of I confided in a really close female professor at my college who I worked up the nerve to share the story to. There's only maybe 4 or 5 people that I would have told throughout my college experience, and she was one of them. And she asked for my permission because she knew at least 4 or 5 other women who were talking to him.
Mm.
So she asked my permission to be able to talk to them as well.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm. So that's his reaction. I think he could tell I was pulling away, and it was almost
Yes.
like this clawing for more.
Oh, he's panicking.
Oh,
He's
for sure.
panicking because this is a house of cards situation and he's managing people at this point to not blow up his job, his marriage, his friends, his other attachments and connections that he's the roster, right?
And earlier on, I think it was the first session, he even talked about the Billy Graham rule because it also drove me nuts because I also grew up in a culture where, male pastors had nothing to do with females and
Yeah,
didn't
won't
even
even talk to
acknowledge
him.
the female ministry. It just didn't connect to the church. It's like we won't even associate with women, period.
Nat didn't know who Billy Graham was until a couple of weeks ago. So the
Yeah, I
Billy
didn't.
Graham, I had to tell her. So the Billy Graham rule, because Army Hammer played him, which is insane. The Billy Graham rule, correct me if I'm wrong, Lexi, is the rule about you don't travel with a woman alone, you don't stay in the same hotel, you don't go to dinner, right, without like a witness or something like that, right?
I think it's just that you won't even be one-on-one with a woman,
Yeah.
period. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, Lexi, I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up as a creaster. I think I said that before. So
mhm,
I did not, that like I grew up with my twin brother. I was basically one of the boys until I hit probably high school. So yeah, I didn't know who that was. I didn't know the rule, but being in ministry in college as well, that was just the standard from what I knew.
Mhm.
mhm.
For you, he told you the Billy Graham rule, but then was not following the Billy Graham rule.
He acknowledged how that directly mm, how it left me lonely in my life because it really did. When there was a lot of male pastors,
Mhm.
there was a level of neglect to my population, and especially being, coming from a broken family where it's like you
Mhm.
need some kind of support while you're young. There just weren't a lot of female leaders in the church. Luckily, there were at my time. It, I'm mumbling at this point, but there were some scattered throughout. They just weren't treated very well.
Well, it's
Mm.
the thing that's interesting psychologically to me about his um offender slash predatory status, which he definitely is. It's interesting because he used the Billy Graham rule like in reverse. So
Mhm,
he is the type of person the Billy Graham rule is for, is to keep people from hurting other people, to keep there from being a he said, she said, all of it, right? That's the Billy Graham rule. I don't
mhm,
love the rule, but it's nobody asked me. And also, the reason for the rule is to keep situations like this from happening
mhm,
because it blows up churches and these things happen and whatever. For him to use that in reverse and identify that you had been isolated from male pastoral leadership because of this rule was like checking a box for him that he was going to have access to you and it
mhm,
was good for you for him to
mhm,
have this access. That's what he was establishing,
mhm,
which is so twisty.
mhm.
It's a little bit wild.
I feel like the older I get, the more deceit I'm kind of unwinding from this interaction. So
Yes.
again,
Yeah.
thank you for this platform because
Yeah. Well, it's just
Mhm.
Thank you for using it.
Mm,
it's interesting. Nat and I we work with so many different kinds of folks, but we do work with people at times who are really, really skilled at manipulation and gaslighting and all of that. And I'm just sitting here just really struck by how practiced he was. I mean, he had a routine down. He knows what to say when.
mhm,
He just didn't expect to run into you. I don't think. I'm sure he ran into some people who didn't go along
Mhm.
at different points, but I don't think he expected the question about his wife. And I think that's why then you were offered dibs because it was a little bit of a bait and switch. Like, right? You asked that question and it's like, but you're kind of my favorite. Like you can have as much time as you want, thinking that would work, but you weren't sick enough for that to work.
Mhm.
Did you book time with him the next week? Because you've got on a flight.
I did, mainly to make him feel good in the moment, and then I immediately ran, and then I typed up this elaborate email when I was up home, and I felt like an asshole. Like that was the effect immediately when I cut this relationship is I felt like
Mm.
I was abandoning him. I feel like I was making him feel scared that he was going to lose his job, lose his family, because in that same breath of recognizing he was going against the Billy Graham rule, he just said, I need you to keep our relationship minimally shared, which now I look at and say, what the hell? But in the moment, I was like, yeah, of course.
Mm,
I think, like, I've seen a lot of men working at churches get fired or let go because of them trying to even help women
mm-hmm.
in ministry, period. Like, that's the kind of messed up culture that I came from, I guess. But so even from meeting one, he kind of had me on a leash of just don't tell anybody about this.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a key in a lock, right? With the trauma, because he correctly assessed that you wanted access to people that could help you develop. He had that access.
Mhm.
What he needed was secrecy, compliance, and to be able to push boundaries. And so he had to establish that secrecy pretty quickly, and he used your experiences in the past to do it.
Mhm.
Hmm.
He
Masterful.
emailed me from a private email, which I didn't realize until after the fact. So, I mean, I'll speed this up a little bit. So,
Yeah.
months go by. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 months. I decide to get back into therapy after a dramatic breakup with a boy, all the fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I had no intention of even telling my therapist about this relationship at all. It seemed like a waste of space to me. I'm like, why would
Yeah.
I talk about this? And she just asked, like, what does your summer look like? Give me a brief outline. Who'd you meet? What's going on? I casually mentioned I started meeting with the officiant of a wedding that I met. And I feel bad because I just left it open ended, tried to move on. Next thing you know, I'm spending the whole hour
Hmm.
processing this relationship, and it ended with her saying, Lexi, you've been groomed.
Mm.
My heart sank. My body just kind of lit up, and I'm like, I felt stupid.
Hmm.
And I also just didn't know the definition of the word at the time. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what? It
Hmm.
doesn't sound good, but what?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, bless that therapist. It's such a hard position to be in, and now you are a therapist, so when you see something that is so damaging and you put words to it, and then you see the impact, but it's to help the person be
Hmm.
free of it. It's hard.
Hmm.
I'm curious. I want to back up just for one thing, and then we'll come back up in the timeline. When you met up with him, you mentioned a couple of behaviors that he did the next few times that you saw him. So you went out of town, you came back. Did you see him on the date that you guys had made? Like, did you see him again after that?
I physically could not get myself to even go to that seminary. I
Okay,
couldn't go to the church for a while.
got it.
Yeah.
So that meeting was when he kissed you on the forehead, put his hand on your leg. Okay, all of that happened in that one meeting.
Yep.
Oh
Mm.
gosh. What did he
He,
do when you didn't see him again?
I was
Because
just
you
gonna,
booked a time,
and then
which
you
was
emailed
smart.
him.
Get out of the situation, go see your family, right? How did
Hmm.
he respond? Like, did you cancel? Did you no show? What'd you do? And then what did he do?
Well, I that's the elaborate email that I typed up when I went
Okay.
back home is just saying, I can't meet with you.
Okay.
And what I said, I tried to be as direct as I could without hurting him, but I just said, this is starting to affect the way that I see God, and it's
Mm,
something doesn't feel right in my body.
mm. Good
And
for
he
you.
validated the shit out of it. And I'm looking at it now like he had his tail between his legs.
Oh, he was
Mhm.
scared shitless. Are you
Mhm.
kidding me?
Hmm.
You were lighting his stuff up.
Hmm.
Mhm.
How did he validate you without accepting responsibility? I'm curious about that.
I remember having this very deep desire to confront him in some way. Um, and I had some mutual friends who actually did it, after months of me working up the nerve to even share that story with them
Mm,
They
because they were
confronted him?
mutual friends. They did. Hmm.
Wow. Good
mhm,
friends. What'd they say to him?
I think at the time I was a little in my own process, so I don't remember word for word what was happening, but I remember them reporting to me that he acted really repentant, like actually sorry for what he did. I think it was all a show, is my
Oh,
suspicion. Well,
100%.
especially after all of us sitting around the table a few weeks
A
ago.
quick Google search would reflect that he was not sincere.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
multiple
Correct.
states. Uh-huh.
Multiple states, multiple issues, lawsuit or two.
Yep.
Yeah. This
Hmm.
wow. So he's acting all repentant and sorry and remorseful.
Hmm.
And I
Mm,
mean, at the end of the day, that really just comes from him terrified that he's gonna
hmm
have another situation come up.
mm. He validates it. Does he try to see you again?
No,
Okay.
I also blocked him. He never showed up to we actually went to the same church. He never showed up again.
Mm,
Wow.
Oh, this is another part of the story. I told the pastor that I was working under at the time when I was interning, and he, hands down, the most respectable pastor I've ever worked under, been in relationship with, just
mm,
a wonderful human being. He is the reason why I think that man never returned to that church because he presented my story to the board and it was agreed that he just should not be coming in unless he can change his ways. And there just wasn't, I don't think he even showed up to even have any more of those conversations. Yeah.
mm-mm. How did that feel to have that man, that pastor, validate what happened to you and then set that boundary where he couldn't just come into your church community anymore?
I think it's part of the reason why I can sit here and tell the story today.
Yeah. He believed you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm,
And he saw it as a big enough deal to do something.
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, you needed that so bad.
Mhm. Because another staff member at that church saw a brief post that I was working on because I felt the need to share the story somehow. And I didn't know the details of how somebody does that well, not referencing an institution. And he found it and had said that he'd talked with the head pastor at the church I was working at the time. And the way that it was spoken was, we decided that you need to take that down because it makes our church look bad.
That is ridiculous.
Mhm.
And this was not the pastor that you confided in, different person, right?
Thank God it was a different person because
Yeah.
that was the response. I would not be talking well at all about
It
churches,
would have
pastors,
crushed you.
anything today. Yeah.
Mhm.
So these other two people, not the head pastor, buried it. They
Mhm.
saw this post and wanted it buried because it didn't look good. Ooh.
Wow.
And the way that I reacted to that, I think, was internally siphoning out like, who can I trust, who can I not trust? And as soon as I stopped working there, I was on a different planet. I'm like, they're not my people anymore, which is really sad. Like that's a level of grief that hasn't gotten enough language for me actually, but
Yeah.
it felt like losing a family
Mm.
in that moment.
Did you leave before you told the pastor, after you told the pastor, the head pastor?
Mhm. I continued to work there until that school year was over.
Okay.
And I kind of I silently walked out,
Mm.
which feels really weak to me, but I didn't have the energy for it, if I'm honest. I had a lot of demons that I was fighting even on top of this situation, and
Mm.
plain and simple, I just needed support,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was hard to admit as a theology student, being pumped with this savior complex mentality, but
Mm.
I don't even think it's weak that
No.
there's no part of me that thinks that's weak that you left,
Mm-mm.
quote unquote, quietly. I think it shows, honestly, like if I'm picturing it, and tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm picturing it,
Mhm.
you were like punched in the face numerous times and you just needed to get out to be
Mm,
safe and to heal.
It feels self-protective.
Yeah.
And having self-preservation is not weakness.
Mm-mm.
It's strength. And it
mm,
actually tells me what you've been through because you had a survival instinct to put some space between you and that whole dynamic. And I think that's really understandable and actually really healthy.
mm,
I think most people who go through something like that need a minute.
mm,
Not many people in a healthy way stay and fight all at the same time. They need to heal a bit first. And the people who do that are a lot of times more reactive because they haven't had any time to process.
mm,
I would even say you sharing your story now, the way that you're sharing it and allowing yourself to step out there shows more
Hmm.
maturity, humility, like I said
Yeah.
before, vulnerability. And I think you allowing yourself to go through your healing process and then come out and start sharing is really huge.
mm,
And that's that fighter in you, right? I knew
mhm.
from day one, I was like, this girl, I literally looked at Janine and I was like, can
Oh, I
we see
know.
from Jeremy? Anyway,
We love you immediately.
we did.
Immediately.
Yes.
You're a pistol. You're just an absolute pistol. And you do seem really free and fun. So I
Mhm.
love seeing the healing that you've had.
Mm. Uh, that's very validating to hear when people see those qualities in me because,
Mm.
yeah, I've experienced a lot of pain.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, getting to know you a bit more today too, I'm kind of amazed at your resilience.
Mhm.
But knowing that came from the background that you came from, walk through some really hard things. This is just one of the things.
Mhm.
And feeling like you're getting back in touch with yourself and some of your like childhood play. So you came to my 40th and you
Yep.
played with those kids and played and played and played. And my son still talks about it.
Oh,
Because you're so fun. You were all that matters, right? You and Christine and the people who are playing with Mac, he's like obsessed,
Christine.
right? That's who he
Mhm.
remembers. And I
Mm.
do remember thinking, watching you run around with the kids, number one, God bless her for having that much energy because I don't have
Yeah.
it. But having the nerve war with the kids and running up and down the stairs, and it was just beautiful. You
Mhm.
have a beautiful energy about you and a warmth that nobody's been able to take away from you. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about the predatory aspect of this, because one of our goals today is to tell a story like this, and then we need to prevent it
Mhm.
by talking about, I think Diddy used to call certain behaviors bitch assness.
Mm.
Okay, so there's too
Clinical.
much bitch assness happening here with
Mhm.
all of the things, right? And I want to break down some of the behaviors to help people so they have words.
Yeah.
You had word when you asked that question, you couldn't have done it better. You could have had an earbud in. I wouldn't have come up with something better in the moment, even outside of the situation. I think you're a miracle. I
Mhm.
would have been yelling and crying all at the same time. I think you just handled yourself incredibly well in that moment when he tried to escalate it and step it up. You just handled yourself. But a lot of people can't do that.
Mm.
And I know I can relate. Now, I'm sure you can relate to that stuck feeling, just feeling like, "Ooh."
Mhm.
So for the women who did get put on the roster, the ones who, for whatever reason, whether it's their story or the way their relationship unfolded with him, they were not able to do what you did and like pop your head up like that.
Mm.
What was his goal? Was his goal to be in a dynamic where he had a group of women that he was mentoring and having sex with all at the same time? Like, was that kind of the goal?
It was the goal. He even shared being part of somebody else's ministry, right? These are learned behaviors
Hmm.
from his youth pastor growing up.
No.
Who was a female, I believe you
Was
said.
a female.
Because I immediately popped off when you told me the story, and I was like, oh my gosh, I bet blah, 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 and men are this and men are that. And you were like, well, actually,
Plot twist.
plot twist, he was victimized to a degree as a teenager in a youth group with a female leader, which is unbelievably unusual statistically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much less likely to be reported too. So it's hard to even know how unusual it is because men are so much less likely to report also.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying too much about their dynamic, because that's more hearsay, what is this ministry? Like if I sign up for this, what am I signing up for?
To this day, I even look back on it and I can't tell if he believes it to the point that his self, like his personhood depends on this being true, or if
Mm.
it's so sinister and twisted that he has such malintent toward manipulation.
Mm.
Well, that was really deep what you just said. So
Mm.
I'm going to put it in dumb people language because that helps me a lot. So what
Okay.
you just said is basically you don't know if he tries to make this true and real to validate his own experience as being okay, or if he's perpetuating it for his own gain,
Mhm.
right? And it could be a little bit of both,
Mhm.
honestly.
Mhm.
I doubt on some level that he believes that this is the way. It's just hard to imagine. And
Mhm.
he knew it was wrong enough that he was, closing blinds and that kind of thing. So, like, there's an element of awareness.
And
Mhm.
telling you to hush, basically.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But it is interesting to me that it is a trauma reenactment to a degree
Mm.
for him.
So what is the ministry? It is, he would call it spiritual formation.
Mm.
That's what he did call it.
And the
Mhm.
formation happens through like, what's the mechanism? What do you do together?
Through sexual satisfaction, sexual desires, sexual relationship.
Mm. So, by you having sex with him, you're undergoing spiritual formation because God is using that process or because that's how you connect with somebody who's in leadership? Like, how did he sell that to people?
He sold it like it was the intended design of creation's relationship, like how people are in their full extent of humanity.
Hmm.
It was so philosophical and twisted. I can't,
Okay.
like, I'm trying to simplify this, but this is the language he was using. It
Yeah,
Well, he started with Song of Solomon.
I know. So did he, when he was trying to sell it, was there, and I'm asking you because I know you didn't obviously take those next steps.
Right.
Mhm.
So for you, because you could read through the bullshit,
Yeah.
however, was there a part of you, or could you understand, maybe that's a better way to put it,
Mhm.
why other women might have fallen into this and like moved forward with that with him?
Especially knowing there were others. Because I could understand, because you knew at that point that he was mentoring several people.
Mhm.
You knew you were not the only one. And if this is his model, you're assuming he's doing this with other people.
Mhm. I 100% could see why women would slip into that.
Mm.
Mm.
And I think it's a lot more simplified to was something that he bonded with me over was the dark night of the soul.
Mm.
And what I think a lot of these women that he was talking to had that I did not at that moment was that they were in the midst of a really dark night of the soul. That was not the darkest night of my soul.
Mm.
No.
So I had some weapons in my pocket, and I was
Mhm.
lucky that that was that timing, and it
Mhm.
wasn't when my little brother had died, or when my grandma had died, or when my mom had just gotten diagnosed with cancer before I left for college.
Mhm.
So he saw your wounds, but he miscalculated big time
Mm-hmm.
what you had experienced.
Mm-hmm. And the
Mhm.
healing that God Himself had already done,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that this man wasn't needed for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hell yeah, Lexi, burn it down. I mean, I don't
This is what I came for. I feel so
I
strong
can't
and empowered right now.
it
Love it.
down.
Good.
No, I
Yeah,
just think that
burn it down.
you were his worst nightmare in many ways.
Mhm.
And he did up and leave.
Like the equalizer of like the spiritual world.
Yes.
Like obsessed with the equalizer right now. My dad made me watch all of them when I was home. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'm just dying to know how this interaction we'll never know. This is not something we'll ever know.
Mm.
But the interaction you had with him did change things for him. Now he persisted in his behaviors. We're pretty sure. A Google search made that pretty apparent. Allegedly. That's our trick. Allegedly. Don't come for
Yes.
it. But also, I'm guessing, just based on my common knowledge of criminal thinking, that he continued this, but he had to account for the Lexi effect, which is I better make damn sure that they don't see through my bullshit.
Mhm.
And I'm so curious what that looked like. There's a part, I mean, I bet there's some legal briefs we could read about it because there's definitely stuff out there, but he had to have shifted tactics a little bit after you.
Hmm.
He would have had to. I'm
Had to.
curious. Do we know what he's doing now?
I haven't gotten the nerve to dig through anything.
Oh, I don't blame you.
Yeah, don't. I just didn't know if there was like public knowledge of like homeboy left the state and decided to sell insurance or something. Because that's what a lot of people in ministry apparently do.
Did anyone who found this out notify his job?
Yep.
Okay.
He got let go silently from the seminary. And something I'm glad, you're bringing up like what happened then right now, because what I really want to make sure to emphasize is that these mutual friends that we had, these people that I trust my life with, I don't want anybody to hear this story and think, how did they not see it? Because it speaks more to his manipulation than it does our ignorance.
Absolutely.
1000%.
Well, and we've talked about this because Nat had a couple friends get sucked into something. We've talked about Nixium. This sounds so much like Keith Raniere and Nixium. It's unbelievable.
Mm.
If you haven't watched that, Lexi, you should watch it. It's
The
pretty wild.
vow. It may
Okay.
be a little triggering. We can watch it together. That way we can
Okay.
take trauma breaks. Have some popcorn, but also take some trauma breaks because it's
Oh,
the mechanism of the connection and the way that it built towards sex with numerous people was this exact thing.
Yeah.
I have special knowledge to impart to you. We begin to develop a relationship. I learn what makes you tick. I exploit what makes you tick. You become one of many people that I'm having sex with.
mhm.
And it becomes your job to stay in my good graces, and I remain in power.
Mm.
Right. And Nixium did it so insanely that the women
Oh,
ended up managing and branding each other.
Yeah.
Like he had an
oh,
army of women propping up his stuff, and they all knew he was sleeping with multiple people and stuff.
Yeah.
And they just kept propping it up. It's the
Yeah.
opposite of your reaction. It would be like, let me find you some more. That's Nixium.
And Epstein too. That
And
happened with
Epstein.
Epstein.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
You make such a great point that you can have the best people in the world in your life. They may or may not see it, right? And that has nothing to do with them. It has to do with how it's manifesting and showing up,
Mhm.
you know? But also they don't know what to do always either to help.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Were you able to share this experience with the individuals who introduced you to him?
Oh, it took so much internal work to be able to do that.
Mm,
Yeah.
Because here's what's going through my mind, not only the vulnerability of it, I had an incredible desire to tell them, but what was hardest was knowing how hurt they would be,
mm.
Mhm.
feeling like they, what's the word? I always forget this word. Enabled it somehow.
Yeah.
They enabled it somehow.
Oh, you were
Mhm.
like pre-feeling their feelings.
Mm. No
Mm,
wonder you're a therapist.
absolutely. I know. Geez.
It was so validating to go through grad school. I'm like, oh, there's names for the way my brain works. This is amazing.
Mhm.
Also, I can shut it
Mhm.
off like a light switch and just be a normal human. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Ah,
wild.
love everything about that.
Sorry, I had one more quick question. Really quickly, how long did the relationship between you and him last?
Mm. It was not very long at all. I probably knew him within a 2-month time frame,
Okay.
and we'd only met 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
Mm,
Was there, and so that part of why I asked that is because it sounds like it was thankfully on the shorter end of what it could have been.
Mhm.
And I was curious if there was anyone in your life that saw these red flags that you weren't maybe seeing. I'm just curious because I've talked with some women who've been in not necessarily the same situation, but similar of like grooming, right? Where people will say, "Hey, that's just weird that they call you like that or they text you at midnight."
mm,
Like that's kind of strange. And then, it's easy to be like, "Why?" Like
Mhm.
whatever, even if it relates to work, that's fine.
mm,
Was there anyone in your life that did that?
I think my friends I've been in seasons where I do isolate quite a bit, but that was definitely one of them.
Mm,
yeah.
I wasn't sharing a lot of my life.
mm,
And then I also, this is kind of vulnerable as well, but I think it is the reality of this situation. I also had a tendency to sexualize myself a lot more. I just had a different kind of humor that other people,
Mhm,
they didn't judge me for it. They just almost would crack a joke and be like, I didn't know that you had a little middle school boy in ya.
mm,
mm.
So I think I just became a lot more conditioned to sexualizing a lot.
mm,
Interesting. Probably as a function of also working through what you think about things later because of upbringing.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that happens too, you know? I do have one question. I know one of the things you were carrying was you said a protective instinct for his wife.
Mm.
And you were feeling that kind of pressure of, oh my gosh, I just met this woman. She's having morning sickness, right? And now he gets let go, which he should have been, but quietly.
Mhm.
Was she informed of what was going on? Do you think she really did know that these things were going on some level, whatever level he chose to fill her in on?
That's a fair question.
Mm-hmm.
I can't know for sure.
Mm.
mm, mhm.
There's no way to know, really.
Mm-mm.
She knows he got fired,
Mhm.
I'll say you can't hide that.
you know?
She did have a deep sadness in her eyes, which is it's quite the one-liner to spit out. And I don't want to read into things, but she had to have known because even on that week that I met him at that wedding, I noticed that he was very comfortable with letting his wife go to bed, and she almost kind of avoided me in some ways whenever we would talk one-on-one.
Mm,
Uh, so I really do think that she knew.
Mm,
mm. Wow, I just can't imagine. And she's pregnant.
Mhm.
All this crap's going on. We don't know how long it went on.
I think it says a lot about how much he spiritualized this ministry,
yeah,
this manipulation,
Yeah.
because I think she even would have supported it in some way.
yeah.
Mm.
She probably felt like she didn't have a choice.
Mm.
She didn't have a choice. And then depending on her spiritual background, may have felt like that was her sacrifice,
Mhm.
Mm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Wifely duties.
Yeah.
Yeah, like her burden, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is that she's going to prop up and support this,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's at her own expense, even if
Mm-hmm.
it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, we do know, allegedly,
Mhm.
that he went on and continued this behavior.
Mm.
What are your thoughts around that?
You saw my reaction. Uh,
I
feels
did.
like a punch to the gut because
Mm,
me in my protective mode, I feel like I could have done something to stop it.
mm.
But in reality, it's like people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
People are going to do what they're going to do. And you know, I'm also protective. This is something you and I have in common. And Lexi, I've been in a couple really tough spots in my life and did not report, did not, even in some instances, push back. And I've been so floored by that. Some even in the past couple of years. I mean, it kind of sneaks up on you. And so I want to validate the fact that there's no right way to handle this, first of all, because
Mm.
it's never supposed to happen.
Mhm.
It's a perversion of everything that we care about. Like it's wrong. It's just wrong on every level.
Mhm.
There's no right way for a victim of something like this to behave. There's no requirement to report, and there's no responsibility after that for what this person chooses to do after you.
Mhm.
It's just all a big old mess. And so you can be the strongest person in the world. You can stand up to everything that moves. I'm not scared of anybody ever. But I have also not reported at times and have been left with this question. And I think it's because we don't know how to respond when our nervous system is on fire and when we're still in it.
Mhm.
Sure, years later, but by then it's like, whatever.
Mhm.
You know, I think the thing that I think is beautiful in your story is number one, how you took up space when he flipped the switch and started to get really inappropriate. I am still enjoying that. It's the only reason I'm not losing my shit right now is because I'm enjoying the fact that you asked the $1 million question at just the right time and he still has nightmares about it. And that makes me very happy. The other thing is you did tell people.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's what I was just gonna say.
You told the people that you felt like you could trust, and it sounds like those people showed up for you and he was held accountable.
Mhm.
So yeah, maybe you didn't do a big complaint thing. By the way, if you did, the way faith institutions are sometimes set up, it would have been quiet anyway and would have been behind the scenes anyway. And you would have probably put yourself through a he said, she said
Yeah.
inquisition. So I
Yeah.
like that you didn't have to walk through that because that's re-traumatizing for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Mhm. But yeah, Lexi, you did. I mean, Janine stole my words, right? Like you did tell.
You did tell.
You did exactly what felt right for you and what felt like justice. And you said this earlier, right? People are going to do what they're going to do. So it's almost like he got punished, right? He had a consequence, but he's still going to do what he's going to do because there's also people in his life who enable it. But you weren't one of those people, my friend.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
Right. And so even for our listeners, right? If y'all are in that position or in a similar spot, just know one, you're not alone.
Mm-mm.
Two, there's so many different avenues for this and do
Yes.
what feels good for you and your brain and your body because at the end of the day, this is your healing process.
Mm.
Yep.
Offenders are offenders, right?
Yes.
And we hope that they can get better. We work with individuals who've
Yeah.
offended in different ways, but sometimes probably in the same that we just don't know about, right? And I do think that there can be rehabilitation and healing for them as well.
Sure.
That is not a survivor's responsibility to
That's
take
right.
on. That's not a survivor's responsibility. So, Lexi, you did everything you could.
Yeah.
And I think your story is going to be so empowering
Yeah.
to many women. And I'm so, so, so thankful that we are one of your first places to go to share.
Yes.
There's the tears. Here they are. Yeah.
Well, I agree. I mean, Natalie, I just agree so much. And I think you're just a beautiful human.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that Nat asked that in our little, y'all, we like are collabing in the moment on what do we want to cover because there's so much.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that we came up with was now that you're in the field,
Yes.
right? You're a literal therapist doing the thing. You're going to have male supervisors that you're going to work with.
You have one right now who's phenomenal.
He is, I mean, we can attest. I mean, he is
Wonderful.
fabulous.
Like a teddy bear.
He is
Such
in
a teddy bear.
and safe. He's so, in my experience with him, he's so safe.
And protective.
I have a quick narrative about your supervisor. So I started with him. He was my supervisor. He was my manager when I first joined Southeast.
Oh.
And like what you just said, he's so safe and filled a spot as a male manager that was, I mean, so healing for me. And I'll tell you a different story another day. But just, I had worked in ministry and, I had worked in a bunch of different places before I landed at Southeast and had both good and positive experiences, but some of the negative ones really took a toll on also how I viewed myself. And Jeremy ended up being a really huge, he ended up just being so healing in someone who loves Jesus, a male manager, just someone who has authority and power over my job. And it was just really cool. So anyway, I'm sorry. I had to share a quick bit about your lovely manager because he's just
Gotta
wonderful.
hype him up any chance we get.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we adore him. You couldn't, when I'm thinking about all the things that led you here,
Mhm.
and I look at that, I'm like, oh, wow. Like,
Yeah.
that makes sense
Yeah.
to me that you would have somebody like Jeremy now.
Yeah. How is it? I'm going to finish our question, Janine. How, for you, Lexi, how is it working with a male manager, and how, like, as you move forward in your career and in your life, how do you suspect you'll feel, as that will probably be your reality at times?
It's something that I really love about my supervisor is that he empowers me, obviously without demanding anything of me. There's never been any moment of really being triggered back to that experience. And I think, again, like God had been healing me and working on me even before that interaction. So I think the most difficult thing that I'm moving forward with is maybe this tendency to distrust leadership.
Understandable.
Immediate distrust.
Yep.
Which is not something that I want to hold, but it's just the fact of the matter. It's the card in my deck, and what I do with it is when it becomes good or bad, I think. But I've just reconciled with that. It's just how my brain's wired at this point.
What if I told you that a working theory that I have, and what do I know, but a working theory that I have is I don't think we should trust leadership right out the gate. I think it is leadership's job to earn trust with us.
Well, I can't believe anything different at this point.
Yeah.
But even if you didn't have the experiences that you have, part of being in leadership, it is a leader's job to establish trust, not a congregant or a supervisee or, I don't know, a mentee. It's not their job to trust from jump. And I think that if we're vulnerable people, and particularly, my gosh, if you have teenagers or vulnerable people in your life, it's okay to be cautious. It actually is okay to be a little bit cautious as long as we're also free.
Mm.
So I'm looking at you and your beautiful face and your, you know, just positive demeanor and kind, warm demeanor. You are not someone who's wearing your trauma like your favorite t-shirt every day. Like you're living in some freedom
Mhm.
right now, but it's okay to be free and cautious all at the same time. That's okay.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's a one-liner. That's going on my whiteboard as soon as we get done
There,
with.
there you go.
Yes.
Woo! Shoulders released. Wow, I felt that physically.
But isn't that helpful? I've had to learn
Mhm.
that. It's just nice to think about the fact that I can be free and warm and enjoy people and get a kick out of people and build relationships with people, but I can still be cautious when it comes to the things closest to me.
Mm,
Mhm.
That's
mhm.
okay. That doesn't mean I haven't worked through something. Maybe it means I have.
Yes. Mhm.
Lexi, we love you so much.
Oh, we
And we're
love
so
Lexi.
appreciative of your
Oh,
time
Big love.
and your like I keep saying, just your willingness to be honest and vulnerable with your story and starting here. I think you're gonna go places with this, my friend, and I'm so excited for you. But I just wanted to say that we love you and thank you for joining us. I
yes.
don't know if you had anything else, Janine.
No, I just think you're so brave, and I think this is going to help people. And we're going to attach a whole bunch of resources to it for people who might be in the same boat. I don't know. I think you're meant to be here. That's for sure. When I first met you, I was like, "Ooh, we get her." I mean, it was like instant excitement. I mean, you were such a boon for our team. Like we were just so excited to have you. And the more I hear about you, the more I respect and care about you because I think you just run deep, deep and good, deep
Mhm.
and good,
It's nice
Patty.
to be seen. I thank you. I can't even wrap my brain around how big of an opportunity this was.
Hmm.
My therapist will be hearing so much about this, and I'm so
Oh,
excited.
yay. I hope your therapist is a fan of this plan, but even if she's not, you get to decide.
Oh,
It's
she'll
your
love it.
story.
I think she's gonna love it.
Yes.
Well,
And
thank you.
here's the last thing I want to end us on, and then we'll
Yeah, yeah.
say farewell. It is your story, my friend, and you can tell
Oh, yeah.
whoever, however you want to tell.
Absolutely.
It is 1000% your story, and it is yours to share. So,
And if it makes some people uncomfortable,
who
Great.
gives a rat's ass?
good,
Yeah.
good.
Bye.
Bye. Pretend you didn't hear it or step up to the plate. You know what I'm saying? Like we can go
Yeah.
either way.
It makes you uncomfortable. You should probably check it out with yourself. Anyway.
Please do. Oh, I do have to tell you now something I forgot to tell you. Oh my gosh.
Oh
I can
gosh.
tell you now or
What?
after, but it might fit in. Okay, so I found out I had forgotten this, and then Garrett reminded me of it because after we did our talk,
Hmm.
there was a man. Did he tell you or did he tell me that he was uncomfortable? I think he told.
Me. He told
Yes.
me.
Yes.
He
Okay.
told me.
Yes. What did he say?
Oh,
What did he say? Because this
Oh
came back
gosh.
to me.
I feel like I
Garrett reminded
purposely,
me.
well,
He was
gosh.
very uncomfortable in our talk about female offenders.
really?
So the biggest thing that he was uncomfortable with. So let me just add,
Yes.
okay, I love Jesus.
Oh yeah,
I
we
love
love Jesus.
I love well-intentioned Christians who do the best that they can to stick to their morals and values. And sometimes I don't care what your thought is. Anyway, so this man had a cross, was wearing a cross, right? I think
Of course, he's the first one who's going to be offended
I
in a topic
know.
about we were talking about female offenders, but we started with why are women angry and why are we
And
tired?
yes.
He
So
can
anyway,
handle
so I was bummed that it was this man who said
Very
something. So I was like,
it.
dude, you're like living the stereotype. Anyway,
Mhm.
so he comes up and he's like, shoot, what did he say? He said, I was really uncomfortable with how you guys started, but by the end, it made sense. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay, so there were
Thank you for that validation.
maybe 10 men in this trading. Okay, lots of women, wall to wall women, right? Because there's a lot of women in our field, right?
Mhm.
And they were all squirming a little bit, a little bit. And it was enjoyable Because even though we were talking about female offenders, we were also addressing female rage and some of the things that women feel and experience. And yeah, that man was uncomfortable. So if you're listening to this and your ministry looks like this, or what we're talking about is threatening to you in any way, or you think we've really missed the mark in our assessment of this, I would encourage you to rethink that pronto. And you know what? Call us up.
Yeah, I was gonna say DM.
I would love to have a further conversation about this because maybe we can help you pull your head right out of your ass and save your family, save your ministry, save your dog, save everything that's going on. So, there are people out there who are acting in this way, thinking in this way, doing these things. And so while we want survivors of this to be able to take care of themselves, including the women that he has hurt and maybe continues to hurt, also, if you are someone who's operating this way, there is help for you too. And we have had people voluntarily put themselves in therapy when they've been called out or when they've just kind of had their own come to Jesus moment. And so, if you call up Southeast, you'll end up meeting with Nat or I for sure if you come in with this constellation of issues. But we always say, we will work voluntarily with a client who's going through something like this, who on the predatory offendery end of things. You just have to have your head out of your ass first. We can't start anywhere else, Well, Lexi, we adore you. You're amazing. Thank you for coming on. I hope you feel validated and important and wonderful because you are all of those things. And I think we should have Lexi do our sign off.
I don't know if she knows what to say.
Bye, forensic friend.
Aww. So we say, as always.
As always.
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.